Deshawn's hand tightens around Carlos's throat, slamming him against the concrete wall. Did I fucking stutter when I said he was off limits? Blood drips from Ethan's split lip as he watches his protector become something terrifying, something that chose him. In this cage, protection and possession blur into something dangerous, something neither of them can take back. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. The steel door clanged shut behind him, and everything Ethan Morrison thought he knew about himself died in that sound. 23 years old. First offense. White-collar crime that wasn't even his fault. He'd taken the fall for his boss, convinced the lawyer could get him off with probation. Instead, 18 months in Riverside State Penitentiary, medium security, general population. Ethan stood frozen in the intake area, his civilian clothes already confiscated, his body now dressed in the shapeless gray uniform that marked him as property of the state. Around him, men moved with purpose, guards barking orders, inmates shuffling past in chains, the whole machinery of incarceration grinding forward without pause or mercy. He'd always been small, 5'7", maybe 140 soaking wet. In the corporate world, his slight frame had been invisible, unremarkable. Here, it made him prey. The intake officer, a bored woman with reading glasses on a chain, processed his paperwork without looking up. Cell assignment B47, second tier. Your cellmate's already established, so don't touch his stuff, don't ask stupid questions, and don't cause problems. She stamped something. Move along. Ethan's hands shook as he gathered his bedroll and the small bag of toiletries they'd issued him. His throat felt tight. He wanted to ask questions. What were the rules? How did he stay safe? What happened if but the officer was already calling the next number? A guard escorted him through a series of locked gates, each one closing behind them with that same terrible finality. The noise level increased as they entered the main cell block, voices echoing off concrete, metal clanging against metal, someone laughing too loud, someone else shouting something Ethan couldn't make out. The guard stopped at a cell on the second tier. Morrison, this is you. Through the bars, Ethan could see the space that would be his home for the next year and a half. 8 by 10 feet, 2 bunks, a toilet and sink combination that offered no privacy. And sitting on the lower bunk, a book open in his hands, was the largest man Ethan had ever seen up close. The guard unlocked the door. Deshawn, you got a new cellie. Try not to break this one. He laughed at his own joke as he pushed Ethan inside. The door locked behind him. Deshawn looked up slowly, and Ethan felt the full weight of that gaze. The man was easily 6'5", with shoulders so broad they seemed to fill the narrow cell. His skin was deep brown, his head shaved clean, and his arms, his arms were the size of Ethan's thighs, marked with scars and ink that told stories Ethan couldn't read. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan clutched his bedroll like a shield, pressed against the bars, trying to make himself even smaller than he already was. Every prison movie he'd ever seen flashed through his mind, every horror story, every warning. Deshawn's eyes traveled over him slowly, assessing. Not sexual, exactly more like a predator deciding if something was worth the effort. Then, unexpectedly, his expression softened just slightly. You can breathe, Deshawn said. His voice was deep, resonant, with an edge of amusement. I don't bite. Well, he paused. Not on the first day, anyway. Ethan's breath came out in a rush he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Deshawn closed his book, something thick, maybe philosophy, and set it aside. Top bunk's yours. I keep my stuff on this side. He gestured to the left half of the cell. You keep yours on that side. Don't touch my things. Don't ask me questions about my case. Don't snore too loud. He leaned back against the wall. And don't look at me like I'm about to hurt you. It's insulting. I'm sorry. I didn't. Ethan's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. I'm Ethan. I know. I can read. Deshawn nodded toward the paper the guard had left. Says you're in for fraud. Rich boy taking the fall for his boss? Something like that. Deshawn studied him with those dark, intelligent eyes. You're scared. It wasn't a question, but Ethan answered anyway. Yes. Good. Fear keeps you careful. Careful keeps you alive. Deshawn stood, unfolding to his full, imposing height, and Ethan instinctively pressed harder against the bars. But there's scared careful and there's scared stupid. You freeze up like that in the yard, you're gonna get eaten alive. Ethan forced himself to take a breath, to step away from the bars. I don't know how to do this. Nobody does. Not at first. Deshawn moved to the sink, giving Ethan space to edge past him to the bunk. You'll learn. Question is whether you learn fast enough. Ethan climbed onto the top bunk with shaking hands, spreading out his thin mattress and single blanket. From this vantage point, he could see the whole cell, and more importantly, he could see Deshawn. The man moved with surprising grace for his size, economical and controlled. Everything about him spoke of power held in check, of strength that didn't need to prove itself. His hands were huge. Ethan found himself staring at them, wondering what those hands could do, what they had done. You keep looking at me like that, Deshawn said without turning around. People are gonna get ideas. Ethan jerked his gaze away, heat flooding his face. I wasn't. Yeah, you were. Deshawn glanced over his shoulder, something unreadable in his expression. But I'll give you this one for free. In here, where you look matters. How you look matters. Who sees you looking matters. He turned fully, leaning against the sink, arms crossed. You want to survive? First rule, nobody touches you without permission. Not me, not anybody. You understand? Ethan nodded, throat too tight to speak. Second rule, you're gonna get tested. Probably tomorrow, maybe the day after. Someone's gonna try you, push you, take your food, make you uncomfortable. How you respond to that first test determines everything that comes after. What should I do? Deshawn's smile was sharp. Fight back. You'll lose. You're gonna lose most fights in here. Size being what it is. But you fight anyway. You make it cost them something. That's respect. I don't know how to fight. Then you're gonna learn real quick. Deshawn sat back down on his bunk, the frame creaking under his weight. Or you're gonna learn to run fast. Or, he paused, something shifting in his expression. Or, you're gonna find protection. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with implications Ethan didn't want to examine. What kind of protection? Ethan asked, though part of him didn't want the answer. Deshawn looked at him for a long moment. The kind that costs. Everything costs in here. New fish. Your commissary, your labor, your dignity, he stopped himself. Just know that nothing's free, and some prices are higher than others. Ethan lay back on his bunk, staring at the ceiling barely 2 feet above his face. The concrete was covered in scratches and marks, previous occupants counting days, leaving messages, making their mark on a space that would outlast them all. Below him, he heard Deshawn settle onto his own bunk. Heard the rustle of pages as the big man returned to his book. Deshawn? Ethan's voice was small. Yeah. Why are you being decent to me? The silence stretched out. Then, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just playing a longer game. Another pause. Or maybe I remember what it's like to be new, to be scared, to think you're not gonna make it. The pages turned. Get some sleep, Ethan. Tomorrow's gonna be harder than today. Ethan closed his eyes. But sleep seemed impossible. His mind raced with fear, with scenarios, with the constant awareness of the massive man below him, who could probably snap him in half without effort. Yet somehow, paradoxically, he felt safer than he'd expected. Something about Deshawn's directness, his clarity, the rules he'd laid out, it gave shape to the chaos. It gave Ethan something to hold on to. The lights dimmed but didn't go out completely. The cell block noise continued, never silent, just shifting in character. Someone was crying a few cells down. Someone else was laughing. The guards made their rounds, keys jangling. Deshawn? Ethan whispered, not sure if the man was still awake. What? Thank you. No response. Just the sound of breathing, steady and deep. Ethan stared into the semi-darkness and wondered what he'd just thanked him for. For not attacking him? For basic human decency? For the illusion of safety in a place designed to strip it away? Or for something else, something he couldn't name yet? Something he felt in the way Deshawn had looked at him, assessed him, decided something about him. Tomorrow, Deshawn had said, would be harder. Ethan believed him. He didn't sleep that first night. He listened to Deshawn's breathing below him, trying to match his own rhythm to it. finding something steady in the sound. He counted the bars of light on the ceiling from the security lights outside. He thought about his apartment, his life, the girlfriend who'd stopped returning his calls the moment the verdict came down. He thought about the man below him who filled the space so completely that Ethan felt both crowded and protected at the same time. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, Ethan's body finally surrendered to exhaustion. He drifted into fitful sleep, dreams mixing with reality, concrete walls closing in, voices shouting, hands reaching for him. He woke with a start multiple times, disoriented, forgetting where he was before the crushing reality reasserted itself. Each time he woke, he could hear Deshawn's steady breathing below, still there, still a presence between him and whatever dangers lurked beyond the cell bars. When morning came, announced by harsh lights snapping on and guards banging on bars, Ethan climbed down from his bunk to find Deshawn already awake, already dressed, watching him with those dark, measuring eyes. "Today," Deshawn said, "you find out what you're made of." The breakfast lineup was Ethan's first real exposure to the general population, and it confirmed every fear he'd carried through the sleepless night. The chow hall was a cavern of concrete and steel, filled with men who'd learned to eat fast and watch their backs simultaneously. The noise was overwhelming, hundreds of voices competing, trays clattering, guards shouting. Deshawn moved through the space with easy confidence, and Ethan stayed close behind him like a shadow. He noticed how other inmates gave Deshawn space, how eyes tracked his movement, but nobody challenged him. Whatever hierarchy existed here, Deshawn occupied a position near the top. They got their trays, something gray and gelatinous that was allegedly eggs, toast that could double as a weapon, and coffee so weak it was barely brown. Deshawn led them to a table where 3 other men sat, all of them large, all of them looking at Ethan with varying degrees of interest. "This is the new cellie," Deshawn said, sitting down. "Ethan, he's off limits." The statement was casual but carried weight. Ethan saw the other men process it, saw something shift in their expressions. "Off limits," one of them repeated, a man with a scar running from his eye to his jaw. "That official, D?" "That's what I said, Malik." Malik grinned, showing a gold tooth. "Aight then, welcome to hell, new fish. Name's Malik. This here's Trey and Big James." Ethan nodded to each of them, not trusting his voice. "He don't talk much," Trey observed. He was younger than the others, maybe mid-20s, with intricate braids and sharp eyes. "He's learning when to talk and when to listen," Deshawn said. "Eat," he told Ethan. "You're gonna need your strength." Ethan forced himself to eat the questionable food, his stomach churning with nerves. Around them, the chow hall continued its chaotic dance. He saw transactions happening, commissary items changing hands, quiet conversations that were clearly more than they appeared, tensions that simmered just below the surface. "So what'd the pretty boy do?" Big James asked. He was aptly named, even larger than Deshawn, with a neck like a tree trunk. "Fraud," Deshawn answered before Ethan could. "White collar. Took the fall for his boss." "Loyal and stupid," Malik said. "Dangerous combination. Or maybe just young," Deshawn countered, and something in his tone made the others back off. Ethan ate in silence, hyper-aware of every glance in his direction, every assessment being made. He could feel eyes on him from other tables, could sense the predatory interest that Deshawn's protection couldn't entirely shield him from. A tray slammed down across from them, and Ethan looked up to see another inmate, Latino, heavily muscled, with teardrops tattooed under his left eye. He stared directly at Ethan, with an intensity that made Ethan's skin crawl. "That's Carlos," Trey said quietly. "Don't make eye contact." But Ethan had already looked, and Carlos smiled a predator's smile, all teeth and no warmth. "Fresh meat," Carlos said, his voice carrying an accent that spoke of streets Ethan had never walked. "You Deshawn's new pet?" "He's my cellie," Deshawn said, his voice gone flat and dangerous. "And I already told you off limits." "I heard what you told me. Just wanted to see for myself what's worth protecting." Carlos leaned forward. "He is pretty. I can see why you'd want to keep him close." The table had gone silent. Ethan could feel the tension ratcheting up, could see Deshawn's hands tighten on his tray. "Carlos," Deshawn said softly, and somehow that soft voice was more terrifying than any shout. "You testing me?" "Just making conversation." Then make it somewhere else, before you say something that costs you. For a moment, Carlos held Deshawn's gaze a challenge, a measuring. Then he stood, grabbing his tray. No disrespect, D. Just curious. He looked at Ethan one more time. Welcome to Riverside, pretty boy. Hope you survive long enough to see the outside again. He walked away, and Ethan released a breath he hadn't known he was holding. That's gonna be a problem, Malik observed. Let me worry about Carlos, Deshawn said. To Ethan, finish eating, and remember his face. He's the kind who pushes boundaries to see what he can get away with. When breakfast ended, Deshawn stood. Yard time, stay close. The yard was worse than the chow hall. Open air, yes, but that just meant more space for things to happen without guards noticing. The prison population divided itself along invisible but clearly defined lines, racial groups, gang affiliations, geographic loyalties. Violence hung in the air like humidity. Deshawn led Ethan to a corner where his group congregated maybe a dozen men, all of them black, all of them carrying themselves with the same controlled danger that Deshawn embodied. Listen up, Deshawn addressed the group. This is Ethan. He's my cellie, which means he's under my protection. Word gets around that anybody touches him. I want to know about it. The men nodded, some curious, some indifferent, one or two looking at Ethan with something that made his skin crawl. An older man, graying at the temples but still powerfully built, stepped forward. You claiming him, D? That's a statement. I'm protecting him, Ray. There's a difference. Is there? Ray's smile was knowing. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're marking territory. Think what you want. Deshawn's voice was flat, brooking no argument. Rules are rules. He's off limits. Ray shrugged. Your call, man. Just know that protection costs, and somebody's gonna expect payment eventually. Let me worry about that. Ethan stood there, feeling like merchandise being discussed by potential buyers. The humiliation burned, but so did something else, a strange heat at being claimed, even if the claiming was just about protection. He didn't understand the feeling, couldn't process why part of him didn't entirely hate being marked as Deshawn's property. The morning stretched out. Deshawn's group worked out makeshift weights, pull-up bars welded to the fence, bodies pushing themselves to their limits because there was nothing else to do with their rage and energy. Ethan watched, mesmerized despite himself by the display of raw strength. Deshawn was magnificent in motion. His body moved with power and precision, muscles rippling under skin that gleamed with sweat in the morning sun. Other men were strong, yes, but Deshawn had something extra, a physical presence that drew the eye and held it. Ethan found himself cataloging details he had no business noticing. The way Deshawn's shoulders flexed when he pulled himself up on the bar. The definition of his arms when he lifted weights that looked impossibly heavy. The sheen of sweat that made his dark skin glow. The focused intensity on his face, like nothing existed except the burn of muscle and the count of repetitions. You might want to stop staring, a voice said next to Ethan. It was Trey, the younger man from breakfast. People notice things like that. I wasn't, Ethan started, but Trey cut him off. Yeah, you were. And look, I'm not judging. D's an impressive sight. But in here, staring at a man like that, that sends a message. You understand what I'm saying? Ethan's face burned. I was just watching the workout. Sure you were. Trey's smile was knowing but not unkind. Just be more careful about it, for your own sake. When Deshawn finished his set and came over, his skin gleaming with exertion, Ethan forced himself to look away, Trey's warning ringing in his ears. You good? Deshawn asked, wiping his face with his shirt. Yeah, fine. Deshawn studied him for a moment, and Ethan had the uncomfortable feeling that those intelligent eyes saw more than Ethan wanted them to. Then Deshawn nodded toward the fence line. Walk with me. They moved away from the group, toward the edge of the yard where they could talk with relative privacy. The fence was topped with razor wire, beyond it a parking lot and then freedom. Ethan stared at it, trying to remember what freedom felt like. You did okay in there, Deshawn said, referring to breakfast. Kept your head down. Didn't make eye contact with the wrong people. That's good. I didn't do anything. I just sat there. Sometimes that's all you can do. Survive one moment, then the next, then the next. Deshawn leaned against the fence, his massive frame making the chain link seem fragile. You're gonna hear things. About me. About why I'm helping you. I need you to ignore most of it. What kind of things? That I'm claiming you as mine. That you're paying me back in... He stopped, jaw tight. In ways that aren't true. That I'm grooming you or breaking you in or whatever other ugly thing they want to believe. And none of that's true? Ethan heard himself ask, surprising himself with the boldness. Deshawn turned to look at him, and the intensity in those dark eyes made Ethan's breath catch. What I'm doing for you is keeping you alive long enough to figure out how to keep yourself alive. Nothing more, nothing less. You don't owe me anything except to not make me regret it. But you said everything has a cost. It does. But the cost isn't always what you think it is. Deshawn's gaze held his. Maybe my cost is just knowing I helped somebody who needed it. Maybe I'm trying to be a better man than I was on the outside. Or maybe... He stopped himself again. It doesn't matter. Point is, you're safe with me. As safe as anybody can be in here. Why me? The question burst out before Ethan could stop it. You could have asked for a different cellie if you didn't want the hassle. Why help me? Deshawn was quiet for a long moment, his eyes scanning the yard, watching for threats, always watching. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more intimate. Because when I looked at you yesterday, standing there scared out of your mind, trying so hard to be brave, I saw myself 8 years ago. First day in county lockup. Scared, alone, and about to get broken. His jaw clenched. Nobody helped me. Nobody gave a damn if I survived or not. So I learned the hard way. I learned what it cost to survive, and I learned that sometimes the cost is too high. What did it cost you? Ethan asked softly. Everything I can never get back. The pain in Deshawn's voice was raw, real. But you? Maybe you don't have to pay what I paid. Maybe I can spare you some of that. They stood there in charged silence, the yard continuing its dangerous dance around them. Ethan felt something shift inside him, some wall beginning to crack. This man, this huge, intimidating, powerful man was protecting him not for what he could get, but because he remembered what it felt like to need protection and not have it. Thank you, Ethan said again, because he didn't know what else to say. Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started. The silence between them felt different now, not awkward or tense, but weighted with understanding. Deshawn's admission had shifted something fundamental. He wasn't just Ethan's cellmate or his protector. He was someone who understood fear, who'd survived his own breaking, who carried scars that went deeper than the ones visible on his skin. What happened to you? Ethan asked quietly. In county. What broke you? Deshawn's expression shuddered immediately. That's not a story for your second day, maybe not ever. But, Ethan, Deshawn's voice carried warning. Some things stay buried for a reason. You want to survive this place? Learn when to push and when to let things lie. This is one of those let it lie moments. Before Ethan could respond, a commotion erupted across the yard, shouting, then the sound of flesh hitting flesh, then guards' whistles blowing. Everyone froze, that was the rule. When whistles blew, you stopped moving and got on the ground. Ethan dropped immediately. Deshawn beside him, both pressed against the chain-link fence. From this vantage point, Ethan could see 2 inmates being restrained, both bloody, both still trying to get at each other while guards dragged them apart. Stupid, Deshawn muttered. Fighting in broad daylight with guards watching. That's how you get months added to your sentence. What were they fighting about? Does it matter? Could be anything. Disrespect, debt, somebody looked at somebody wrong. In here, every slight is magnified. Every insult is a challenge. You walk past someone's cell and your shadow falls wrong. That's enough to start something. The guards got the situation under control, hauling both fighters toward segregation. The yard remained frozen, everyone on the ground, waiting for the all clear. Deshawn? Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. Yeah? I don't think I can do this for 18 months. I don't think I'm strong enough. Deshawn turned his head to look at Ethan, their faces close together on the ground. You are. You just don't know it yet. How can you be so sure? Because you're still here. You got through your first night, your first breakfast, your first yard time. Every moment you survive makes you stronger, even when it doesn't feel like it. His eyes held Ethan's with intensity that made it impossible to look away. "And because I'm not gonna let you break. That's a promise." The whistle blew again, all clear. Everyone stood, dusting themselves off, the yard returning to its normal, controlled chaos, as if nothing had happened. "Come on," Deshawn said. "Commissary's open today. You got any money on your books?" Ethan nodded. His lawyer had arranged for him to have some funds deposited. "Good. You're gonna need supplies. Soap, toothpaste, maybe some snacks. Basic survival shit." Deshawn started walking, and Ethan fell into step beside him. "But listen, don't buy too much, don't flash money around. And don't lend anything to anybody unless I tell you it's okay." "Why not?" "Because everything's currency in here. You lend someone a candy bar, they owe you. That debt gets traded, multiplied, used as leverage. Before you know it, that one candy bar has turned into expectations you can't meet and don't want to." They joined the line at the commissary window. Ethan could see the limited selection through the bars: basic toiletries, packaged snacks, instant coffee, writing supplies. Nothing fresh. Nothing that could be turned into a weapon. Everything overpriced. "Get what you need, not what you want," Deshawn advised. "Save your money for things that matter. Phone time with family, legal supplies if you're still fighting your case. Things that help you maintain connections to the outside." "I don't have anyone to call," Ethan heard himself admit. "My girlfriend stopped answering after the trial. My parents, they're ashamed. They haven't visited or called since sentencing." Deshawn's expression softened. "Then save it anyway. 18 months is a long time. People change, or you might need it for something else." When Ethan reached the window, he ordered basic supplies: soap, toothpaste, deodorant, some coffee, a few packages of cookies. The total was astronomical for what he received, but complaining wouldn't change anything. Back in their cell later that afternoon, Ethan organized his small stash of commissary items, carefully following Deshawn's earlier instruction about keeping his stuff on his side of the cell. "You learn fast," Deshawn observed from his bunk. "That's good. Means you might actually make it." "Might?" Ethan climbed onto his bunk, exhausted despite having done nothing physical all day. "Survival's never guaranteed. You can do everything right and still get caught in the wrong situation. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong person decides you're the target." Deshawn's voice was matter-of-fact. "All you can do is stack the odds in your favor." "Is that what you're doing? Stacking the odds for me?" "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing." Deshawn was quiet for a moment. "You know what the worst part of this place is? It's not the violence or the food or even the loss of freedom. It's the loneliness. Being surrounded by hundreds of people and still feeling completely alone." Ethan thought about his own isolation, his girlfriend's abandonment, his parents' shame, the friends who'd simply stopped existing when he went to prison. "I know that feeling. I figured you did. That's another reason I'm helping you. Nobody should have to go through this completely alone." The admission hung in the air between them, vulnerable and honest. Ethan found himself wanting to know more about this man who protected him, wanted to understand what had shaped him, what had broken him, what kept him going through 7 more years of this existence. "Deshawn?" Ethan's voice was soft in the dimming light. "Yeah? Will you tell me about yourself? Not your case or why you're here. Just who you are." For a long moment, Deshawn didn't respond. Then, "What do you want to know?" "Anything. Everything. What you were like before this, what you miss most, what you dream about when you let yourself dream." Deshawn shifted on his bunk below, and Ethan could hear the vulnerability in the movement. "I was a teacher. High school math. Worked in an underfunded school in Baltimore, teaching kids who mostly didn't want to be there." His voice carried warmth now, remembering. "But some of them did. Some of them really tried, and those were the ones I stayed for." "A teacher," Ethan repeated, surprised. Somehow it fit Deshawn's intelligence, his patience, the way he explained things clearly. "Yeah, I was good at it too. Had a gift for making complicated things make sense, for seeing potential in kids everyone else had written off." Pain crept into his voice. "I had plans. Was working on my master's degree. Wanted to become a principal eventually. Maybe change the system from the inside. What happened? Life happened. Bad choices happened. I got caught up in something I thought I could control, and I was wrong." Deshawn's voice went flat. And now I'm here, teaching survival skills instead of algebra. Different classroom, different lessons. Same basic principle, help people understand the systems they're trapped in. Do you still think about teaching? About going back when you get out? Every day. But I don't know if they'll let a convicted felon work with kids, even if I was one of the good ones before. The system doesn't much care about rehabilitation when it comes to certain crimes. He paused. 7 more years to wonder if I'll ever get that chance again. Ethan heard the grief in those words, not just for freedom lost, but for purpose, for identity, for the man Deshawn had been before this place claimed him. I think you'd be an amazing teacher, Ethan said quietly. You've already taught me more about surviving this place in 2 days than I could have learned in months on my own. That's different. That's just street smarts and prison politics. No, it's more than that. You're teaching me how to be strong when I don't feel strong. How to face fear without letting it paralyze me. How to maintain dignity in a place designed to strip it away. Those are lessons worth learning. Deshawn was silent for so long that Ethan thought maybe he'd said too much, crossed some invisible line. Then, thanks, Ethan. I needed to hear that. The night settled over the cell block. The familiar sounds of prison after dark, guards making rounds, men talking in neighboring cells, someone coughing, the occasional shout or laugh. Ethan lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, processing everything he'd learned and experienced in just 2 days. Hey, Ethan? Deshawn's voice cut through the darkness. Yeah, tomorrow's gonna be harder. The test is coming, the one I warned you about. Carlos or one of his crew is gonna try something. I need you to be ready. Ethan's heart began to race. What should I do? Remember what I said. Fight back. Make it cost them. And whatever happens, don't show fear. Even if you're terrified, don't let them see it. And if I can't do that, if I freeze, then I'll handle it. But Ethan, you need to at least try. For your own sake. For the next 18 months of your life. Because if you don't establish yourself as someone who fights back, you'll spend every day of your sentence being tested. Ethan closed his eyes, trying to find courage he didn't feel. Okay, I'll try. That's all I'm asking. Sleep came easier that second night, though Ethan's dreams were filled with violence and fear, and the overwhelming presence of the man who'd somehow become the most important person in his life within 48 hours. When he woke, Deshawn was already up, doing push-ups in the small space between their bunks. Ethan watched from above, mesmerized by the controlled power in every movement, the discipline, the focus. Morning, Deshawn said without breaking rhythm. Today's the day. You ready? Ethan climbed down, his muscles stiff from the unfamiliar bunk. As ready as I'll ever be. Good answer. Deshawn stood, barely winded despite doing at least 100 push-ups. Remember, this isn't about winning. It's about showing you're not easy prey. That's all. They went through the morning routine breakfast in the chow hall, where Carlos stared at Ethan with predatory interest. Yard time, where tension seemed higher than usual, everyone waiting for something to happen. It happened during afternoon recreation in the day room. Ethan was sitting on a bench in the day room, trying to look casual while his heart hammered against his ribs. Deshawn had left him alone deliberately, another test, another lesson in standing on his own. Around him, men played cards, watched the grainy television, talked in low voices about things Ethan couldn't hear. He felt Carlos before he saw him. The temperature in the room seemed to shift, conversations quieting, eyes turning toward the doorway where Carlos entered with 2 of his crew. They moved with purpose, scanning the room until Carlos's gaze locked on Ethan. There's the pretty boy, Carlos said loud enough for everyone to hear. All alone. Where's your protector, huh? Ethan's mouth went dry. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to call for Deshawn, to find a guard. But he remembered the lessons. Don't show fear. Fight back. Make it cost them. He stood slowly, forcing his legs to support him despite the trembling. I don't want any trouble. That's too bad, Carlos said, closing the distance. Because trouble found you anyway. The first shove came fast, Carlos's hand against Ethan's chest, sending him stumbling backward. The room had gone completely silent now, everyone watching to see how the new fish would respond. You're in my spot, Carlos said, even though there were empty benches everywhere. Move. This was it. The moment Deshawn had warned him about. Ethan could feel dozens of eyes on him, feel the weight of this decision that would determine the next 18 months of his life. "No," Ethan said, his voice shaking but audible. Carlos's eyebrows rose. "No? I was here first. Find another bench." The punch came faster than Ethan expected, Carlos's fist connecting with his jaw, sending him sprawling across the floor. Pain exploded through his face, stars dancing in his vision. Before he could recover, hands grabbed him, hauled him up, another blow landing in his ribs that drove the air from his lungs. But this time, Ethan didn't just take it. He swung wildly, his fist connecting with something solid. He heard Carlos grunt, felt satisfaction even through his pain. He kept swinging, kept fighting, even as more blows rained down on him. His lips split, his eyes swelling, his ribs screaming, but he didn't stop. "Enough!" The voice cut through the violence like thunder. Suddenly the weight was off him. Through his blurred vision, Ethan saw Deshawn holding Carlos by the throat, slamming him against the wall so hard the concrete cracked. "Did I fucking stutter?" Deshawn's voice was deadly quiet, more terrifying than any shout, "when I said he was off limits. Man, we were just..." Carlos choked out. "Just what? Testing him? By putting hands on what's mine?" Deshawn's grip tightened, and Carlos's face began to turn red. "You want to test something, Carlos? Test how long you can breathe with my hands around your throat." "We're cool, D. We're cool." Deshawn held him for another long moment, long enough that Carlos's eyes started to bulge, long enough that everyone in the day room understood the message. Then he released him, and Carlos crumpled to the floor, gasping. "Anybody else want to test my celly?" Deshawn's voice carried across the day room. "Anybody else think I wasn't serious about protection?" Silence answered him. Deshawn turned to Ethan, who was still on the floor, blood dripping from his split lip. "Get up!" Ethan struggled to his feet, his entire body screaming in protest. "You did good," Deshawn said quietly, so only Ethan could hear. "You fought back. That's all that matters. Now let's get you cleaned up." In their cell, Deshawn wet a cloth and began carefully wiping the blood from Ethan's face. They sat close together on the lower bunk, Deshawn's hands gentle despite their size, working around the swelling that was already starting. "This is gonna hurt," Deshawn warned, pressing the cloth to Ethan's split lip. Ethan hissed through his teeth but didn't pull away. Up close like this, he could see every detail of Deshawn's face, the strong line of his jaw, the concerned furrow between his brows, the way his dark eyes focused so intently on the task. "You've got a fighter in you," Deshawn observed. "Buried under all that fear and softness, there's something harder, something that doesn't quit, doesn't feel like it," Ethan managed, wincing as Deshawn's thumb pressed against his cheekbone, checking for fractures. "That's because you don't know yourself yet. Prison teaches you who you really are. Strips away all the comfortable lies." His thumb brushed Ethan's cheekbone again, the touch lingering longer than necessary. "The question is whether you like what you find." Ethan found himself staring at Deshawn's mouth as he spoke, watching the movement of those full lips forming words. The cell felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. He was hyper-aware of every point of contact. Deshawn's thigh pressed against his, the hand that still cupped his face, the heat radiating from the larger man's body. "Ethan," Deshawn said carefully, his voice dropping lower, "I need you to be very sure about something." "What?" "Why you keep looking at me the way you do." Heat flooded Ethan's face despite the pain. "I don't lie. Not to me. Not when we're locked in this cell together every night." Deshawn's voice was rough now, charged with something that made Ethan's breath catch. "Are you scared of me? Or scared of what you're feeling?" The question hung between them, dangerous and electric. Ethan knew he should deny it, should pull away, should maintain the boundaries that Deshawn himself had tried to establish. But he was tired of lying to himself, to everyone. "Both," Ethan whispered. Deshawn's hand stilled on his face, the cloth forgotten. The air in the cell felt thick, charged with something neither of them could name, but both felt in every breath. "Listen to me very carefully," Deshawn said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What you're feeling right now, that confusion, that pull, it's normal. Prison does things to people. Makes you crave connection, touch, anything that reminds you you're still human and not just a number. Is that what this is? Ethan asked, unable to look away from those dark eyes. Just circumstance? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. Deshawn's thumb traced along Ethan's jaw. A touch that could be clinical or could be something else entirely. But I need you to understand something. If this becomes more than protection, if it becomes something else, there's no going back. In here, that kind of connection, it changes everything. Have you, Ethan's voice caught? Have you had that kind of connection before? Pain flickered across Deshawn's features before he could hide it. Once. A long time ago, in county. And it cost us both more than you can imagine. He pulled his hand away, creating distance. I won't do that to you. I won't let you become what I became. What did you become? Someone who forgot where protection ended and possession began. Deshawn stood abruptly, putting the length of the cell between them. Someone who thought love could exist in a cage. It can't, Ethan. It's just survival wearing a prettier mask. Ethan touched his swollen lip, still feeling the ghost of Deshawn's touch on his face. You don't believe people can care about each other in here? I believe people can need each other, depend on each other, even feel something real for each other. Deshawn's back was to him, shoulders tense. But love requires freedom, and we don't have that. What we have is proximity and desperation, and time stretching out so long that anything starts to feel like salvation. That's not what this feels like, Ethan said quietly. No? Deshawn turned, and the intensity in his gaze made Ethan's breath catch. Then, tell me what it feels like. Tell me why you keep staring at me like you're trying to memorize every detail. Tell me why you relax when I'm in the cell and tense up when I leave. Tell me why your breath changes when I get too close. Ethan couldn't answer because putting words to it meant admitting something he wasn't ready to face. That in 3 days, this man had become his entire world. That the thought of Deshawn not being there terrified him more than any other inmate. That when Deshawn touched his face to check his injuries, Ethan had wanted to lean into that touch and never pull away. That's what I thought, Deshawn said quietly. You don't know what you're feeling because you've never had to feel it before. Out there, you could be whoever you wanted. In here, everything is stripped down to raw need. And what do you need? Ethan asked, emboldened by pain and honesty and the strange intimacy of the moment. Deshawn's jaw worked, muscles tensing. That's a dangerous question. I'm already in danger. Might as well know why. For a long moment, Deshawn just looked at him, and Ethan felt seen in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Then Deshawn moved, crossing the small space in 2 strides, and suddenly he was there, close enough that Ethan could feel his heat, smell his scent, see the war being waged behind his eyes. I need, Deshawn said, his voice rough, to keep you safe, to teach you how to survive this place, to make sure you walk out of here in 18 months, still yourself, not broken, not changed into something you'll hate. He paused, his hand coming up to grip the edge of the bunk beside Ethan's head. And I need to stop wanting things I can't have. What if I want you to have them? The words escaped before Ethan could stop them. Deshawn's other hand came up, fingers threading into Ethan's hair, gripping tight but not painfully. You don't know what you're offering. You're hurt, scared, grateful for protection. That's not the same as wanting. Then what is it? It's survival instinct. It's your body and mind trying to bond with the person keeping you alive. Stockholm Syndrome with better lighting. But even as Deshawn said it, his grip tightened, and his eyes dropped to Ethan's mouth. It's not real. Feels real, Ethan whispered. It would. Deshawn's forehead dropped to rest against Ethan's, their breath mingling in the small space between them. God, you have no idea how much I want to believe that. How much I want to stop being the strong one and just take what you're offering. Then take it. I can't. But Deshawn didn't pull away. Instead, he stayed there, close enough that Ethan could count his eyelashes, could see the flecks of gold in those dark eyes, could feel the tremor in the hand that still gripped his hair. You're too small, too new, too soft for this world. It would break you, and I won't be the one who helps it do that. I'm stronger than you think, maybe. But you're also sitting here with a split lip and bruised ribs from a fight you had no chance of winning. You're trembling right now, and I don't know if it's from fear or something else. You're looking at me like I'm your salvation when I'm just another prisoner trying to get through each day. You're more than that. Deshawn pulled back enough to look at him properly, his hands still in Ethan's hair, their faces inches apart. Am I? Or am I just the first person in here who showed you basic decency? Don't mistake kindness for something deeper, Ethan. Don't build fantasies around the fact that I stopped someone from beating you worse than they did. The words were harsh, meant to create distance. But Ethan heard what lay beneath them. Deshawn was protecting him again, not from other inmates this time, but from Deshawn himself. From the dangerous attraction building between them that neither could fully control. What happened with the person you cared about before? Ethan asked quietly. In county. What happened to them? Pain flickered across Deshawn's features, raw and unguarded. His name was Marcus. He was 21, in for possession with intent to distribute. Smart kid, full of dreams about what he'd do when he got out. Deshawn's voice went hollow. We were cellies for 6 months. Started as protection, same as you and me, but it became more. We actually thought what we had was real. What happened? He got transferred to another facility. We promised we'd find each other when we got out, that what we had was real enough to survive separation. His laugh was bitter. He was released 6 months before me. I wrote to him every week, never got a single letter back. When I finally got out, I went to the address he'd given me. Someone else lived there. They'd never heard of him. The name he gave me was fake. Everything was fake. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me an important lesson. What happens in here stays in here. It doesn't survive the outside world because it was never meant to. It's just two people clinging to each other in the dark, pretending it means something more than shared desperation. You loved him. I thought I did. Maybe I did. It doesn't matter now. Deshawn finally stepped back, breaking the charged connection between them. And I'm not doing that again. I'm not falling for someone I can't keep. I'm not building something that only exists within these walls. What if it could exist outside them? It can't. Deshawn's voice was firm, final. You'll get out in 18 months and go back to your life. You'll remember this as a dark period, maybe even as the time you experimented with something different. But you won't remember me. Not really. Not in ways that matter. You don't know that. I know that you're a young white man with prospects and a future. I'm a black man with a record and 7 more years on my sentence. We don't have a future, Ethan. We have right now, this cell, this circumstance. That's all. The finality in his voice hurt more than Ethan's physical injuries. He wanted to argue, to insist that Deshawn was wrong, that what was building between them could be more than just proximity and need. But he didn't have the words, didn't have the experience, didn't have anything except the overwhelming certainty that something significant was happening in this tiny cell. So, what do? Ethan asked finally. We keep you alive. We get you through your sentence. We maintain boundaries. Deshawn sat on his bunk, putting physical distance between them again. And we don't let this become something that'll hurt us both when it inevitably ends. And if I don't want boundaries... Deshawn's eyes met his, and the heat in them contradicted every word he'd just spoken. Then you're going to have to accept that I want what's best for you more than I want what I want. And what's best for you is keeping this professional. Professional, Ethan repeated flatly. Is that what we're calling this? It's what it needs to be. But even as Deshawn said it, the tension between them remained unresolved, undeniable, crackling in the air like electricity before a storm. They both felt it. They both knew it wasn't going away just because Deshawn had drawn a line. Some lines, Ethan was beginning to understand, existed specifically to be crossed. The question was whether either of them was brave enough or reckless enough to cross it. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that was both comforting and torturous. Deshawn maintained his distance, professional, protective, but careful not to touch Ethan unless absolutely necessary. No more gentle hands on his face. No more charged moments in the small space of their cell. Just instruction, guidance, the patient teaching of survival skills. But the awareness never faded. Ethan felt it every night when they were locked in together, the cell shrinking around them. He felt it in the way Deshawn's eyes would linger on him before quickly looking away. He felt it in the careful way they moved around each other, always conscious of proximity, always aware of the dangerous heat that flared whenever they got too close. A week passed, then 2, Ethan learned the rhythms of prison life, when to speak and when to stay silent, which guards were fair and which were corrupt, how to navigate the complex social hierarchies that governed every interaction. He learned to sleep through the noise, to eat the terrible food without complaint, to work his assigned job in the prison library with quiet competence. And he learned about Deshawn, not all at once, but in fragments shared during quiet moments. How Deshawn had grown up in Baltimore's roughest neighborhood, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep him and his sister fed. How he'd been the first in his family to go to college, graduating with honors despite working full-time to pay tuition. How he'd returned to his neighborhood as a teacher, determined to give back, to show kids like him that there was a way out. "What went wrong?" Ethan asked one night, lying on his bunk while Deshawn read below him. "My sister's boyfriend," Deshawn said after a long pause. "He got involved with some people he shouldn't have, owed money to the wrong crew. They were going to kill him." His voice went flat. "I tried to help, made a deal with them. I'd move some product for them, just once, to clear his debt. Thought I could control it, thought I could walk away after. But you couldn't. They don't let you walk away. Once you're in until they say you're out. And when I tried to leave anyway, they set me up. Made sure I got caught with enough weight to catch serious time." He was quiet for a moment. "My sister doesn't speak to me anymore. Says I destroyed our family's reputation. Her boyfriend left her anyway. So, I sacrificed everything for nothing. I'm sorry." "Don't be. I made my choices. Now I'm paying for them." Deshawn closed his book. "But that's why I understand you, Ethan. Taking the fall for someone else, thinking loyalty matters more than self-preservation. We're both here because we were too stupid or too good to save ourselves." The comparison settled something in Ethan's chest. They weren't so different after all, just 2 men who'd made mistakes, who'd trusted the wrong people, who were now paying prices that seemed wildly disproportionate to their crimes. 7 more years, Ethan said softly. "How do you do it? How do you wake up every day knowing you have 7 more years of this? One day at a time, 1 hour if a day feels too long, 1 minute if an hour feels impossible." Deshawn's voice carried hard-won wisdom. "You find meaning where you can. I tutor guys working on their GED. I work out. I read everything I can get my hands on. I try to be better than this place wants me to be. And when that's not enough, then I survive anyway, because the alternative is letting this place win, letting it turn me into the animal they think I already am." He paused. "And because somewhere in the back of my mind, I still have hope that maybe, just maybe, there's a life waiting for me on the other side of these 7 years, even if that hope is foolish." Ethan wanted to tell him that it wasn't foolish, that Deshawn deserved every good thing the world could offer. But the words stuck in his throat, too raw, too revealing of feelings he was supposed to be suppressing. The incident came in week 3. Ethan was in the library, reshelling books, when he became aware of someone standing too close behind him. He turned to find an inmate he didn't recognize, white, mid-30s, with swastika tattoos barely visible above his collar. "You're Deshawn's bitch, right?" the man said, his breath reeking of cigarettes and something worse. Ethan's stomach clenched. "I'm his cellmate. Same difference in here." The man stepped closer, backing Ethan against the bookshelf. "Word is you're real pretty. Real soft. Bet Deshawn's enjoying that. Back off," Ethan said, trying to sound confident despite the fear flooding his system. "Or what? You gonna tell your protector?" The man's hand came up, fingers trailing along Ethan's jaw in a parody of tenderness. "Maybe I want to turn. See what's got Deshawn so possessive." Ethan reacted on instinct. He shoved hard, putting all his weight behind it. The man stumbled back, surprised, and Ethan used the moment to bolt. He made it 3 steps before a hand grabbed his collar, yanking him backward. "You little, is there a problem here?" Ethan had never been so relieved to hear Deshawn's voice. He looked up to see his cellmate in the library doorway, his expression deadly calm in a way that was somehow more terrifying than anger. The man released Ethan immediately. "No problem, D. Just talking." "Looked like more than talking to me." Deshawn moved into the space with predatory grace. "Looked like you had hands on what's mine." "I didn't know he was off limits, man. Nobody told me." "Everybody knows. Deshawn was close now, towering over the other man despite only a few inches difference in height. His presence filled the space, made the air feel thinner. So either you're stupid or you're testing me. Which is it? I'm not testing nothing, D, I swear. Good. Then you won't mind spreading the word. Ethan Morrison is under my protection. That means hands off, eyes off, thoughts off. He's mine. Anybody got a problem with that? They can bring it to me directly. Deshawn's voice dropped lower. But they better be ready for what comes next. The man nodded frantically and practically ran from the library. Deshawn turned to Ethan, and his expression shifted from dangerous to concerned. You okay? Did he hurt you? I'm fine. Just scared me. You handled it right. Pushed back immediately, didn't freeze. Deshawn's hand came up to Ethan's shoulder, a brief squeeze of reassurance before he pulled away again. But this is escalating. Word's getting around that you're important to me, and that's making you a target. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I knew this would happen when I claimed you. Deshawn ran a hand over his head, frustration evident. I just hoped we'd have more time before it got this bad. What do? We double down. Make it absolutely clear that touching you means war. Deshawn's jaw set. And we hope that's enough to keep the predators at bay. That night, lying in their cell, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The way Deshawn had said mine with such absolute conviction. The way other inmates now looked at Ethan not just as fresh meat anymore, but as someone claimed, someone owned, someone who belonged to Deshawn in ways that went beyond simple protection. Deshawn? Ethan whispered into the darkness. Yeah? When you told that guy I was yours, did you mean it? Silence stretched out. Then, in here, yeah, in the ways that matter for survival. You're under my protection, which means you're mine to protect. That's all it means. But Ethan heard the lie in those words, heard the careful way Deshawn was trying to maintain boundaries that were dissolving a little more every day. And outside of survival, Ethan pressed, emboldened by darkness and distance and the strange intimacy of two men locked in a cage together. Ethan, I need to know. Are you claiming me just for protection? Or is there something else? The silence that followed felt endless. Then Deshawn's voice came, rough and honest. I don't know anymore. It started as protection, but somewhere along the way, he trailed off. This is why I tried to keep distance. Because I knew if I let myself feel anything beyond responsibility, it would complicate everything. Maybe complicated isn't bad. In here, complicated gets people hurt. But there was less conviction in his voice now. Go to sleep, Ethan. We can't have this conversation. Because you don't want to? Or because you're afraid of where it might lead? Both, Deshawn admitted. Definitely both. Ethan lay there in the darkness, his heart racing, everything unsaid, hanging heavy between them. They were balanced on a knife's edge, both of them knowing that one wrong move, one honest admission, would send them tumbling into territory neither could predict or control. The question was whether they would step back to safety, or whether they would finally, inevitably, let themselves fall. 2 more weeks passed in mounting tension. Every night in their cell felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Every accidental touch, and there were many in 8 feet of shared space, sent electricity crackling between them. Every loaded glance, every moment of charged silence, every careful word that meant so much more than its surface meaning. They were both drowning in it, and neither knew how to swim to shore. Then came the night everything changed. It started with a nightmare. Ethan woke gasping, his heart hammering, the remnants of the dream still vivid, hands grabbing him, voices threatening him, violence he couldn't escape. He sat up too fast, cracking his head on the ceiling, the pain mixing with panic until he couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the walls closing in. Ethan, Deshawn's voice cut through the panic. Hey, look at me. You're safe. You're okay. But Ethan couldn't stop shaking, couldn't calm his racing heart. Without thinking, he climbed down from his bunk, his legs unsteady, his whole body trembling. Ethan, Deshawn started, but stopped when Ethan sank onto his bunk, curling into himself. I can't, Ethan's voice broke. I can't do this anymore. Can't pretend I'm okay. Can't pretend this doesn't terrify me. Can't. Strong arms wrapped around him, pulling him close. Deshawn's warmth surrounded him, solid and real and safe. "I've got you," Deshawn murmured. "You're okay. I'm right here." Ethan buried his face in Deshawn's chest, breathing in his scent, letting the steady thud of his heartbeat calm his own racing pulse. They sat like that for long minutes, Deshawn holding him while he shook, one large hand stroking slow circles on his back. "Sorry," Ethan finally whispered. I needed—" "Don't apologize." Deshawn's arms tightened around him. "You're human. You're allowed to break sometimes." But something had shifted in the embrace. What started as comfort was becoming something else. Ethan could feel it in the way Deshawn's breathing had changed, in the tension creeping into those strong arms, in the heat building between their bodies. He pulled back enough to look up at Deshawn's face, and what he saw there made his breath catch. Desire, naked and undeniable, warring with restraint that was visibly crumbling. "Deshawn," Ethan breathed. "Don't," Deshawn said roughly. "Don't look at me like that unless you're absolutely sure." "I am sure. You're scared and vulnerable, and I know exactly what I want." Ethan's hand came up to Deshawn's face, feeling the rasp of stubble against his palm. "I've known for weeks. The only question is whether you want it too." Deshawn's eyes closed, his jaw clenching. "You know I do. God, Ethan, you have to know." He broke off, struggling with himself. "Then stop fighting it. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection from this. From you." Ethan's thumb traced Deshawn's bottom lip, feeling it tremble beneath his touch. "I need you to stop treating me like I don't know my own mind." Deshawn's hand came up to capture Ethan's wrist, his grip firm. For a moment they just stared at each other, both breathing hard, both balanced on that knife's edge. Then Deshawn broke. His mouth found Ethan's with a hunger that took Ethan's breath away, all the restraint of the past weeks shattering in an instant. The kiss was deep, consuming, filled with weeks of denied want. Ethan opened for him immediately, letting Deshawn claim his mouth, letting himself be overwhelmed by the intensity of it. Deshawn's hands were in his hair, tilting his head for better access, and Ethan melted into it, into him, into this moment he'd been craving without fully understanding what he was craving. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Deshawn rested his forehead against Ethan's. "We can't take this back," he warned. "Once we cross this line—" "I don't want to take it back," Ethan said firmly. "I want this. I want you. I'm done pretending I don't." "Ethan," Deshawn's voice was wrecked. "You're so small. I could hurt you without meaning to. And in here, being this close to someone, it's dangerous in ways you don't understand yet. Then teach me." Ethan's hands fisted in Deshawn's shirt. "Like you've taught me everything else. Show me how this works. Show me what you need." Deshawn groaned, the sound rumbling through his chest. "What I need is for you to be absolutely certain. Because if we do this, you're mine. Not just for protection. Actually mine. And I don't share." The possessiveness in those words should have scared Ethan. Instead, it sent heat flooding through him. "I don't want anyone else. I just want you." "Then we do this my way," Deshawn said, his voice dropping to something dark and commanding. "We go slow. I make sure you're ready. And if at any point you want to stop, we stop. No questions asked." "Okay. Say it. Say you understand." "I understand," Ethan breathed. "And I trust you." Those 3 words seemed to undo whatever last resistance Deshawn had been clinging to. He kissed Ethan again, slower this time but no less intense, his hands gentle despite their size, learning the shape of Ethan's smaller frame. "You're so small," Deshawn murmured against his mouth. "So fragile. I have to be careful with you. I'm stronger than I look. Maybe. But I'm still going to treat you like you're precious. Because you are." Deshawn's hand slid under Ethan's shirt, palms warm against his skin. "This is really what you want? Not just comfort or safety, but this?" "This," Ethan confirmed, arching into the touch. "All of it. You." Deshawn's breath shuddered out. "Then hold on to me, because I'm done fighting this. Done pretending I don't want you so badly it's killing me. Done acting like you're just my responsibility when you've become so much more than that." "What am I?" Ethan asked, needing to hear it. Deshawn's eyes met his, dark and intense, and full of everything they'd been denying. "Mine. You're mine, Ethan. And I'm keeping you.